The Middle East is a region of immense historical, cultural, and religious significance. It is also a region plagued by seemingly intractable conflicts and crises. From the shores of the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf, violence, instability, and human suffering have become tragically commonplace. Understanding the complexities of the Middle East's ongoing turmoil requires delving into the deep-rooted historical, political, economic, and social factors that have shaped the region's trajectory. For decades, the Middle East has been grappling with a multitude of challenges that have fueled a perpetual cycle of conflict. The hopes of the Arab Spring have long since faded, replaced by renewed authoritarianism, civil wars, and the rise of extremist groups. The region is a tinderbox of tensions, where even seemingly minor incidents can quickly escalate into major conflagrations. The human cost of these conflicts has been catastrophic. Millions have been displaced from their homes, forced to flee to neighboring countries or embark on perilous journeys to seek refuge in distant lands. The international community has struggled to find effective solutions, often resorting to short-term measures that fail to address the root causes of the crises. This essay will examine the key factors contributing to the Middle East's persistent turmoil, exploring the historical grievances, geopolitical rivalries, foreign interventions, economic disparities, and social injustices that have fueled the flames of conflict. By understanding the complex interplay of these factors, we can begin to grasp the magnitude of the challenges and identify potential pathways towards a more peaceful and prosperous future for the region. To comprehend the Middle East's present, we must first journey into its past. The region's contemporary struggles are deeply intertwined with the legacies of colonialism, arbitrary borders, and the rise of competing nationalisms. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire after World War I ushered in an era of Western dominance as European powers carved up the region into spheres of influence, often with little regard for existing ethnic, religious, or tribal divisions. The Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, a secret pact between Britain and France, divided the Ottoman territories into areas of control, laying the groundwork for the creation of modern states such as Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan. These artificially drawn borders, often imposed without the consent of the governed, created long-lasting tensions and sowed the seeds of future conflicts. The creation of Israel in 1948, while a watershed moment for the Jewish people, exacerbated existing tensions in the region. The displacement of Palestinians and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict have become central to the Middle East's instability, fueling resentment, violence, and mistrust. The Cold War further complicated the regional landscape. The United States and the Soviet Union vied for influence, backing different sides in regional conflicts and often prioritizing their own geopolitical interests over the well-being of the region's people. The legacy of this era continues to cast a long shadow, as external powers continue to play a significant role in shaping the region's political dynamics. The Middle East has become a geopolitical chessboard where regional powers engage in intricate power plays, often using proxy wars and sectarian tensions to advance their interests. The rivalry between Saudi Arabia, the leading Sunni power, and Iran, the dominant Shia power, has become a defining feature of the regional landscape. Saudi Arabia, with its vast oil wealth and close ties to the West, has long sought to maintain its regional hegemony, viewing Iran's growing influence with suspicion. Iran, on the other hand, seeks to reassert its historical role as a major regional player, challenging Saudi Arabia's dominance and supporting allied groups across the region. The Syrian civil war, which erupted in 2011, has become a tragic illustration of this regional power struggle. Iran has provided crucial support to the regime of Bashar al-Assad, while Saudi Arabia has backed various rebel groups opposed to Assad's rule. This proxy war has further destabilized the region, fueling sectarian violence, displacing millions, and creating a breeding ground for extremist groups. The competition for influence extends beyond the Saudi-Iranian rivalry. Turkey, under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has sought to reassert its Ottoman-era influence, intervening militarily in Syria and Libya, and pursuing an increasingly assertive foreign policy in the eastern Mediterranean. Israel, a regional military power, remains deeply concerned about Iran's nuclear ambitions and its support for groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Section 4. The West's footprint, interventionism, and its unintended consequences. The West, particularly the United States, has long played an outsized role in the Middle East, intervening militarily, providing economic assistance, and seeking to shape the region's political trajectory. However, these interventions have often had unintended consequences, exacerbating existing tensions, fueling anti-Western sentiment, and contributing to the region's instability. The US invasion of Iraq in 2003, based on the flawed premise of Saddam Hussein's alleged possession of weapons of mass destruction, is a stark example of the unintended consequences of interventionism. The invasion toppled Saddam Hussein but plunged Iraq into chaos, fueling sectarian violence, creating a power vacuum that allowed groups like ISIS to flourish and destabilizing the entire region. NATO's intervention in Libya in 2011, while initially intended to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe, ultimately led to the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, but also plunged the country into civil war, creating a haven for militias and human traffickers and further destabilizing the region. The West's support for authoritarian regimes in the name of stability has also backfired. By prioritizing security interests over democratic values, Western powers have often propped up repressive regimes that have stifled dissent, fueled resentment, and created fertile ground for extremism. The West's historical role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, particularly its unwavering support for Israel, has also fueled anti-Western sentiment and complicated efforts to achieve a lasting peace agreement. The perception of double standards and the West's perceived complicity in Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories have undermined its credibility as a neutral broker in the conflict. Section 5. Economic despair fueling resentment and instability. While political and historical factors have undoubtedly played a significant role in shaping the Middle East's turbulent landscape, economic despair, widespread unemployment, and lack of opportunities, particularly for the region's burgeoning youth population, have created fertile ground for resentment, frustration, and instability. The Middle East is a region of stark contrasts. While some countries, such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, possess vast oil wealth, others struggle with poverty, unemployment, and a lack of basic services. This economic disparity, often exacerbated by corruption, cronyism, and a lack of economic diversification, has fueled a sense of injustice and resentment. The region's youth, who make up a significant portion of the population, face particularly bleak prospects. High unemployment rates, limited access to education and job training, and a lack of social mobility have left many young people feeling disillusioned, disenfranchised, and susceptible to the lure of extremist ideologies. The Arab Spring uprisings that swept across the region in 2011 were fueled in part by these economic grievances. Protests erupted in countries like Tunisia, Egypt, and Syria, demanding jobs, economic opportunities, and an end to corruption and authoritarian rule. However, the failure of many of these uprisings to deliver on their promises of economic justice and political reform has only deepened the sense of despair and frustration. Section 6. Breeding grounds for extremism, poverty, ideology, and the lure of violence. The Middle East has become a breeding ground for extremist groups that exploit the region's political vacuums, sectarian tensions, and economic despair to recruit followers and advance their violent agendas. Groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Hezbollah offer a potent mix of ideology, identity, and purpose to those who feel marginalized, disenfranchised, and hopeless. Poverty, lack of education, and limited economic opportunities create a fertile recruiting ground for extremist groups. These groups often target vulnerable populations, particularly young people, offering them a sense of belonging, purpose, and a path to empowerment through violence. They exploit religious and sectarian differences to sow divisions and justify their extremist ideologies. The failure of governance in many parts of the region has also contributed to the rise of extremism. Weak or corrupt state institutions, unable to provide basic services, security, or a sense of justice, create a vacuum that extremist groups are quick to fill. They present themselves as alternatives to the status quo, offering a semblance of order and justice in chaotic environments. The internet and social media have become powerful tools for extremist groups to spread their propaganda, recruit followers, and incite violence. They use sophisticated online platforms to disseminate their messages, targeting specific demographics and exploiting grievances to radicalize individuals. The fight against extremism requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of radicalization. This includes promoting economic development, creating job opportunities, improving education and healthcare, strengthening governance, and combating corruption. It also requires countering extremist ideologies, promoting tolerance and understanding, and fostering a sense of hope and opportunity for the region's youth.